Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Vergil Ortiz Jr. versus Erickson Lubin fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into this. And so it's... Oh, and also, sorry, feel free to join the Patreon as well. I'm always kind of going on about that at the moment. But if you are, like I say, new around here and you haven't heard about me in the Patreon so far, there's been plenty of videos that have come from it, and you can basically just kind of request any kind of combat sporting related content, and I will try my best to get it out for you guys, and the link will be in the description. Thank you very much. Now let's get straight into it though, and in my opinion, this is a pretty decent fight. It's a good fight. I think it's a good matchup for Vergil Ortiz. Of course, it's not, the world title test in which I'm sure fans will be of wanting to have seen for Vergil Ortiz Jr. But it's Ortiz back on a main event slot, back on a Golden Boy main event slot, and he has a chance here to be able to beat another kind of top contender and get himself in line for another world title, as Erickson Lubin is mandatory for, I believe, one of the belts. It might be the IBF belt, if I can remember correctly, which he won in like a final eliminator against Adriel Holmes Jr. in his last fight. But again, like I say, I think this is a pretty tough test, and I do, respect Vergil Ortiz for taking it. Again, though, like I say, it's not the world title fight in which Ortiz and fans kind of want to see for him, especially as an interim champion, especially now it's his, third, fourth fight fighting for that interim championship. You feel like he should be moving along a bit more to actually have finally been given a world title fight, especially, with the state of the super welterweight division. You look at the champions, there's, multiple different champions in which he could fight, and again, the level is not bad. It's just, maybe not as good as what it once was. You haven't got the likes of Terence Crawford anywhere kind of near that anymore, and instead you've got the likes of like an Abbas Barriou and a Xander Zayas, who are, a little bit untested at the elite level, and they're both champions. So again, like you say, there is kind of options and opportunities there, as well as like a Murtaza Aliyev as well, who is a very good, tough fighter, but again, he beat Tim Tszyu impressively, but hasn't had a tremendous amount of other tough fights. And of course, he's going on to fight Josh Kelly. So it's a bit, interesting, I suppose, for fans to see that somebody like a Josh Kelly, who is a very good fighter, but he's getting a world title fight before and instead of somebody like a Vergil Ortiz Jr. Again, like I say, it's interesting, but Eddie Hearn has also said that Jaron Ennis and him will be in attendance for this fight, so that could make for a good possible face-off after the event, of course, if Ortiz is to go on to win, or if Lubin's going to win, to be fair. But yeah, like I say, it's probably, a good thing to see that Eddie Hearn is keen to be there. He wants to be, pushing the Jaron Ennis fight, and he feels like Jaron Ennis just isn't getting the fights in which he should be getting, like all the fans agree with as well. And so Eddie Hearn is actually taking it into his own hands to be there, to be present for the, Vergil Ortiz fight, to hopefully get that next, even though that actually probably won't be for a world title fight either. Ortiz, though, of course, last time out he managed to get a good unanimous decision win against Israel Madrimov, and arguably he performed better against him than what Terence Crawford did. Again, Terence Crawford, that fight against Madrimov was Crawford definitely overlooking Madrimov. Again, stylistic matchup maybe was probably a harder stylistic matchup than fans give it credit for. Madrimov is a tough fight for anybody, but Terence Crawford again did seem to struggle and did definitely have a closer fight with Madrimov, in my opinion, than Vergil Ortiz did. And so, that was definitely, in my opinion, a good win for Ortiz, and he had a lot to gain, with his stock, because of course Terence Crawford fought a close fight against Madrimov. This was also, like I say, a needed good win as well after his very tough test, which was the Boajuk fight, where, both of them went back and forth. It was a real slug and fight, which was inevitably, like I say, just a bit of a war, and yeah, but that was not, I suppose, the best of looks for Ortiz to have that kind of a tough level of opposition and that kind of a tough fight in his first kind of noticeable step up in opposition against somebody like a Boachuk. And also, to be fair, at the time, or within the next kind of 2 years afterwards, it did age pretty well, or at least year afterwards, it aged pretty well. But then, of course, Boachuk has just gone on to lose against Brandon Adams in the rematch, so perhaps Boachuk isn't really the level in which we kind of thought he was. I mean, he went on to beat Ishmael Davis and then Mikhail Fox, but again, neither of them to a really elite level names. So Boachuk to then go on to lose to Brandon Adams perhaps says that he wasn't really the elite world level fighter that we might have thought because of the Ortiz fight. And again, like I say, may suggest that Boachuk isn't really that good of a win on the Ortiz record. It is good to see, though, that Ortiz is not having the health issues in which he once was having. I think it was 2023 where he was having quite a lot of health related issues. There was multiple times in the welterweight division where he had a fight against Stanionis, which was changed, rearranged, and pushed back. I think it was due to, I forget what the condition's called, but it is where you're just overtraining and things like that as well. But since being in the super welterweight division, he hasn't really seemed to have too many problems with illness or anything like that. Of course, I don't want to jinx anything, but for the most part, again, like I say, his illness issues haven't seemed to be too much of a problem in more recent times. And again, like a lot of fights in which he fights, he's going to be coming in with quite a noticeable reach disadvantage, which is a 4.5 reach disadvantage coming into this fight. Lubin, of course, hasn't been the most active of fighters, but he is always in tough fights against top names. And I mean, last time out, saying that he hadn't fought in about 2 years, he came back and beat an unbeaten Ardrell Holmes Jr., who was 17-0 at the time, was fighting with ProBox TV. Lubin may have even come into the away corner for that fight as well. It was an impressive victory. In fact, he managed to get a stoppage as well. To be able to take that after 2 years out, it's similar kind of to what we've seen somebody like a Keith Thurman do. It was impressive, and again, like I say, that was a good win for him, and that was, just before. Well, I mean, but the fight before that was the kind of controversial Ramos Jr. win, which of course, like I say, was back in 2023, which definitely has aged well for Lubin, but like I say, at the time, definitely it was seen as a robbery, and I feel like all the fans that watched that fight did think that it was a robbery and that Ramos should have won. But like I say, Lubin has been able to pick up 2 very good elite level wins there. But then at the same time, obviously, his defeats have both come against, elite level opposition in Jamel Charlo, who at the time was, I think, 29-0, and Sebastian Fundora, who was champion at the time as well. Or at least I think he was champion at the time, I can't remember. But of course, like I say, both of them came by stoppage. The Jamel Charlo one was definitely worse, getting stopped in the first round. But the Fundora one, didn't really expose the chin of Lubin too much. I mean, he got dropped by Fundora. Then he went and flipped it and dropped Fundora, which was, made it a bit more of an entertaining fight. And then just ended up kind of going out on his shield. And then the corner went and stepped in and pulled him out. But that was showcasing that he does have that heart and desire to be able to push through. But he does seem to have come back a little bit of a changed fighter. I think that Ardrell Holmes Jr. fight, I don't know if he looked a bit more aged to an extent, but he did look a little bit, slower, in my opinion, in that fight than what we have seen from him, in the more previous fights, like I say, going back 2023, 2022, earlier and earlier, he did look faster. And again, like I said, I don't know if that was just because he felt like he didn't need to change gears against Holmes Jr., or if, like I say, he genuinely has just kind of changed up his style and slowed down a bit. But at the same time, Lubin has a right to be annoyed at the kind of poster design in which was depicting him very small compared to Vergil Ortiz Jr. It's always interesting to see, it's very obvious to see when a promoter is wanting to push and promote their fighter, because the poster is often, just very heavy on the fighter in which they want to win, which again could be the mindset of the judges. Hopefully it isn't, but Lubin was rightfully annoyed at that. And I did just want to say that as well. You know, we see it with matchroom posters as well at times, and it is, you know, a little bit, I'm sure, frustrating for fighters like Lubin, who has worked hard to get to this position and just isn't getting the credit he deserves. So I'm sure he's definitely going to be coming into this one probably a bit frustrated and coming in with that, of course, underdog mentality. To speak about both fighters though individually, Ortiz, he's somebody who's got good shot placement, especially on his singles, you know, the body shot singles in which he throws, he twists really well into. He does have, in my opinion, one punch KO power. I mean, he definitely had that in the welterweight division. Of course, when you look at his, you know, more elite level fights in which he's had his past two contests, they both have been decisions. So again, maybe he doesn't have that one punch KO power, but I mean, he had Boachuk rocked on multiple occasions, and before that, he knocked his opponent out via body shot early. And against Madrimov, he just didn't really seem to be able to actually get any kind of real times in which Madrimov was kind of in trouble. But, you know, Madrimov is a tough fighter, a game fighter, and Crawford didn't really seem to have Madrimov in trouble too many times either, to be fair. But Ortiz, he's got a nice tight guard to stop many gaps or many openings. Again, like I say, he's able to kind of bring his punches back nicely as well to that nice tight guard, which is definitely necessary. And you see that well with the likes of like a Jesse Van Rodriguez at the moment. Like I say, bringing back that nice tight guard. I would just say that maybe Rodriguez's movements and reactions are a little bit better than Ortiz in my opinion. But Ortiz, he digs to the body well. He has fast hands in my opinion. He's got good punch variety, which has really been on display in, you know, his more recent fights. He cuts off the ring well as well. I think he's definitely improved with that. He plants his feet well and, like I say, twists into his shots. When he's using that kind of patience to land them singular shots, it is impressive. And like I say, he can land that shots, but he doesn't even need to load up to land the powerful single short shots, which is again impressive as well. He lands cleaner in exchanges, in my opinion. He puts power in pretty much everything in which he throws. He doesn't seem to respect his opponents too much, which can be a bad thing, but I think is a good thing for him because of how aggressive he is. Like I say, he's got short shots that don't need to be loaded up. He's able to rip through you with his shots as well, especially the body works, which, like I say, is just really ripping through. He's able to keep a high tempo. Again, you know, maybe he slowed down a bit in the back end of the Madrimov fight, and at times in the Boachuk fight he did slow down a little bit, but then, you know, he was able to change gear and become a little bit faster and sharper in the latter end of the Boachuk fight, which did actually inevitably end up with him getting caught, but I'll talk about that more in a second. And he works angles well. Negatives about him, I think he can fight pretty emotionally. I think that's obvious with his ego to not back down, and I mean pretty much means that he's always going to get drawn into a fight and pretty much always resort into fighting in a war, which works for him because, like I say, he's often landing better in exchanges, but can definitely lean to him getting caught with a few shots where perhaps he shouldn't be, and, you know, putting himself in a bit more risky of positions because, you know, I don't think he is a bad boxer and he can move well and they are there, you know, the head movement, the boxing ability, but he just always seems to be able to, he always seems to get caught and then just come straight in and just resort to getting put into a war instead of just sticking to that defensive movement a bit more. He gets caught by straight shots coming in. He's not really wanting to take too much of a backward step for the most part, and he doesn't use much defensive movement and does forget, you know, his head movement, forgets his jab, doesn't really have too much of a setup to his work a lot of the time, whereas I think Lubin does set up his shots better. He's can switch off at times and tries to be very physical, but isn't really tremendously big as a size, and like I say, can resort to him being pushed back. And I think he was trying to be quite physical with Boachuk, and Boachuk was able to force him back a bit at times, and I think even Madrimov did it a little bit at times as well. He can stay on the ropes, you know, if he does get backed up, and he's always trying to want to fight to get out of them bad positions instead of, like I say, using his movement. When he's kind of being confident slash relaxed and, like I say, just moving on the back foot, it looks good and it's nice on the eye, but like I say, it is when he drops his hands and he doesn't keep a disciplined guard when he's fighting at a mid-range and when he's being confident, and he can't mix together the head movement and the, nice tight guard and, all the good, solid defensive fundamentals. You can't mix them all together. It's either he's in close with his tight guard or he's at a distance on the back foot, kind of just trying to slip shots with his hands really low down and just being a bit overconfident. And again, that's when he can get caught, and that's when he was kind of not hurt, but he was dropped against Boachuk. To speak about Lubin, though, he's somebody who is able to always try and respond. He's got pretty good counters. Again, maybe his reactions might be slowing down a little bit, but he does, try and go for good counters. He's always trying to also come around the guard, which is something in which he was able to do nicely against Holmes Jr. He keeps his hands up high for the most part, but he does leave more openings, in my opinion, than that of Ortiz. He's always throwing in pairs. He's got pressure, but I think it is calculated and can be a bit more calculated than that of Ortiz's at times. He tees off well when he can put you on the back foot, and of course that was how he was able to get Holmes Jr. out of there later on in their fight. He's not bad at cutting off the ring either, to be fair to him, and I think he shortens up his shots pretty nicely as well. So I think even if it is a fight which is going to a war, which I think fans are kind of expecting, it could be a decent war. I wouldn't just expect Lubin to just get walked straight through. He varies up his power well, and again, that's something in which is probably better for him to do than that of what Ortiz is just doing, where it's all power and, like I say, can sap his energy a little bit at times. He knows how to point score. He can work off a jab a bit better, in my opinion. His jab is nice when he uses it. He didn't really use it too much in his last fight, but he didn't really need to because he was against Holmes Jr., who had the real kind of rangy arms in, so he didn't really want to be fighting at a jab against him. But when he does use his jab, he can change level well with it, and he can also probe and kind of disrupt rhythm with it as well, which is nice. He is willing to be physical, even though, again, like I say, he's not really that physically strong either. He knows when to change gear for the most part as well, and I think he's confident as well. Like I say, underdog mentality, but still very confident in his own ability. Negatives about him, I think he is, like I say, slowing down a bit in my opinion. I think he wants to fight at a bit of a slower pace and can, be a bit slower handed in my opinion than what he once was. Again, perhaps that was just his last performance. I'm not sure, but again, this fight will definitely show if that's true or not. I think his reactions could have slowed a bit. He can be caught waiting in range, and he's got good pressure, but it's not really overwhelming pressure like that of what Ortiz's is at times. He's quite flat-footed, and he wasn't flat-footed before, but like I say, he's just become a bit more flat-footed in my opinion. His head's on the line. He gets more visibly tired, then he leaves more gaps. He can be too comfortable himself, and he can also sit on the ropes himself as well, which was what was happening quite a lot against Ramos, which is why, a lot of people thought that Ramos was having success because Lubin was just sitting on the ropes and trying to, catch him with counters, but then Ramos could see that that was happening, and he was going for his, fast-handed combinations, then pulling himself back out of range to then, be able to slip one, then come back again with another set, and that was all due to the fact that Lubin was just sitting on the ropes. He can load up his counters, which is pretty much what I was just on about. He allows the fight to be in close even when he is having success at mid-range. He's not able to always keep the fight at the distance in which it probably should be or is best for him. He can be pushed back. He's not, too tough, in my opinion, and I think he does, take too many defensive, precautions a bit at times. Like I say, being a bit too defensively vulnerable at times, and a bit too, like I say, covering up a bit too much and things like that. Who do I think is going to win in this fight? I think that Ortiz Jr. is going to be able to do it. I think he's going to be able to win, and I think he's going to be able to win via stoppage, but a late stoppage. I would like to see an Erickson Lubin that can cause some issues to Vergil Ortiz Jr., and I'll be interested to see if Ortiz Jr. at any point is trying to go for that more of the outside the ring kind of trying to slip shots if he has any trouble with Lubin. And if Lubin can get his jab going as well, his fast pace, changing of levels jab, or his probing jab, that could cause Ortiz Jr. to get a bit frustrated. But I think inevitably still Ortiz Jr. is going to be able to walk through a lot of things. I think Lubin is going to get pushed up and backed up against the ropes. And inevitably, like I say, Ortiz is going to tee off and probably stop Lubin. It could be very similar to the way that Fundora did it. Again, I think Fundora won via stoppage in round 9, and it could play out the exact same way, in my opinion. But then we could go on to fight next. Maybe, again, I think it is probably perfect time for a Jaron Ennis fight. I mean, if you look at the state of the division at the moment, like I've talked about, Josh Kelly versus Saliev is probably going to happen. Possibly a Xander Zayas versus Vergil Ortiz fight could happen for the WBO title, but I'm not sure if Top Rank would be willing to take that fight. So, again, we see Furman versus Fundora was delayed, which of course was for the WBC title. That was postponed and pushed back due to Fundora getting an injury. So, Furman, I'm sure, probably will wait for that world title fight. So, really, this is probably, like I say, the best time for Ortiz Jr. to fight Ennis because, majority of the champions are a little bit busy or tied up. I mean, maybe he could go on to fight Abbas Barriou, but that's not really as big of a fight as an Ortiz Jr. versus an Ennis. Ennis versus Vergil Ortiz Jr. would be criminal to not have a world title on the line, but it would still be, a really good fight on whatever card it would be on, even though it probably would have to be on a big Riyadh season show, to be, in my opinion. But I'm sure, His Excellency would want to see that. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.